Hello, I'm Kevin Andrews. Welcome to the June edition of my new Menzies update. It's been busy in the House of Representatives over recent weeks as Parliament rises for the winter recess. I thought I'd update you on a number of issues. First, the 2009-10 federal budget delivers a massive deficit of $58 billion. The surplus which the coalition left, some $20 billion, has been totally wiped. Of course, the global financial crisis was going to impact on Australia's economy, but our economic position was worsened by the mismanagement of the Rudd government. The Rudd government has pursued $124 billion in new spending since the election, and they spent billions to create jobs, but are now forecasting an 8% unemployment rate for 2010. That means some 1 million Australians will find themselves out of work. And on top of this, an extra 500,000 people are on the dole. The government's proposed emissions trading scheme is causing great concern to businesses and to families. My view is that climate change is best tackled from a position of economic strength, and to effectively meet the huge cost of tackling greenhouse gas reduction requires people in jobs, businesses performing strongly, and a cashed up economy. As a country producing only 1.4% of the world's CO2 emissions, there is no Australian solution to climate change. There can only be a global solution. Everybody agrees that only coordinated global action to put a price on emitting or storing CO2 will have any impact on reducing the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. As such, the design of any Australian emissions trading scheme must be responsive to the existence or the absence of a global agreement. There are stark differences emerging between the Rudd government and the legislation endorsed by the US President, Mr. Obama. Indeed, amendments made in May to the draft US emissions trading legislation, sponsored by Democrat congressmen with the blessing of the President, include very specific provisions providing 100% protection to US export and import competing industries in any future emissions trading scheme until 2025. This should be a wake-up call of monumental proportions for Mr. Rudd. A badly designed scheme is worse than no scheme at all. During my time as Employment and Workplace Relations Minister, I established the Australian Building and Construction Commission to return efficiency and to building sites and to stamp out intimidation, bullying and corruption. But now the Employment Minister, Julia Gillard, is going to introduce laws that mean the Commission will lose its ability to effectively do its job. Instead of allowing the Commission to do its job and continue to ensure that the number of days lost in the sector due to industrial disputation remains at record lows, Ms Gillard has opened the door to the militant construction and electrical unions, the CFMEU and the ETU, and effectively taken the policeman off the building site. All of Labor's changes to workplace laws have now passed through the Parliament. The test for the government will be jobs. How many jobs will Labor's changes destroy? And we will know every month. It's not a matter of theory. It's not a matter of speculation. It won't be a matter of ideology. This is a matter of fact, and all Australians can judge these new laws on that measure. The Rudd government's Alcopops tax has always been a tax grab and not a health measure. After a year on, the government is unable to provide any evidence that their tax does what it's supposed to do, that is, to reduce binge drinking, especially amongst young people. Kevin Rudd and Wayne Swan have driven the budget into a very substantial deficit, and we now know that Australia faces an uncertain future burdened with unprecedented levels of debt totalling more than $300 billion. When I first opposed this tax grab, there was a large surplus. Now, thanks to Labor's mismanagement, opposing it would increase an already massive debt. Kevin Rudd made this mess with the nation's finances, and the coalition will act responsibly and not make an already bad situation worse. Given that this measure is a tax measure, and given the dire budgetary context, The Coalition therefore decided not to oppose the Elco-POPs legislation. As Chairman of the Coalition's Policy Review, I'm responsible for reviewing and developing the policies that the Coalition will take to the next election. Over the past few months, I've been working closely with the Shadow Ministry and with a large number of stakeholders and interest groups to begin refining our policies. I've also been holding community policy forums around the country, including 2 in Menzies, one with Professor Ian Harper on economics and more recently with the Shadow Environment Minister Greg Hunt. It's also been a busy time in the electorate. I recently congratulated David Versey on being selected under the Australian Local Sporting Champions program. This program provides some funding for individuals competing in an official state or national sporting competition. David's passionate about sailing and as a member of the Victorian sailing team has prepared and trained throughout the year in the lead up to the Australian Youth National Championships in Queensland. The Warrandyte High School community gathered together, indeed late last year, to celebrate the life of local hero and teacher Rob Graham, and honoured him by dedicating the school's oval to him following his death in a bicycle accident. It was fitting that the oval be named after Rob Graham, a great role model and a man fondly remembered for his humility, commitment and courage. I welcome the announcement of funding to local schools under Round 1 of the Primary Schools for the 21st Century. 4 primary schools in Menzies have been awarded funding for new construction works and will share $10 million. The successful schools are Donburn Primary, Don Vale Primary, Templestowe Valley Primary and Park Orchards Primary School. Unfortunately, some schools that have applied for priority projects, such as the installation of replacement air conditioners or new building projects that fall outside the restrictions in the program guidelines, have been told that these applications will not be allowed. These schools across the country are being forced to direct funds instead towards projects that do not address the particular needs of the school. As you may be aware, the Federal Coalition voted against legislation for the $42 billion stimulus package, as we believe that it will fail to secure existing jobs or to increase productivity, efficiency, competitiveness or employment across the economy. The Rudd government has attempted to construe this action as being unsupportive of Australian schools. This is simply not the case. The Coalition welcomes investment in schools, demonstrated by the introduction of our Investing in Our Schools program by the previous Howard government and discontinued by the current Labor government. The Coalition supports a return to the Investing in Our Schools style school infrastructure arrangements, whereby local schools were able to receive the grants directly to deal with their locally identified needs. And finally, congratulations to Dr. Sandra Mercer-Moore, the Chairman of the Menzies Electorate Conference, who was recently appointed as a member of the Order of Australia for her dedicated service to physiotherapy and to the Liberal Party. The House of Representatives will sit again in August. Until then, you can keep in touch with me via my website or on Facebook. And if you need any assistance with matters concerning the federal government, please contact me at my electorate office in Doncaster. Thank you for watching.